I slipped out of work a little early, my heart racing with excitement as I carried a small bag cradled in my hands. Inside were Eric's favorite pastries and a box of chocolates I knew he couldn't resist. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in gold as I drove home, humming softly, every mile bringing me closer to the surprise I couldn't wait to give. I pictured his grin, that spark in his eyes when he realized I'd gone out of my way just to make him happy. It wasn't just about sweets. For me, it was about love. Love wrapped in layers of buttery pastry and rich, glossy chocolate squares. I've always been the kind of woman who believes the little things matter most, that small gestures can carry the weight of 1,000 words. Smiling to myself, I whispered in the car. He'll be so happy. Chocolates, his favorite pastries. He deserves a little surprise. That thought alone filled me with warmth. The closer I got to home, the more I drifted into memories of us in the early days. Long walks, inside jokes, nights where we couldn't stop talking, couldn't stop laughing. I imagined us tonight, curled up on the sofa, sharing bites of pastry and stories from the day. My chest swelled with tenderness, completely unaware that what waited for me behind that front door would shatter all of it in an instant. As I turned onto our street, I slowed down, savoring the anticipation. It felt like carrying a secret in my chest, one I couldn't wait to share. The little white house with the red shutters came into view, and just seeing it made me smile. That was our home, our safe place, the backdrop of so many moments we'd built together. I parked the car, clutching the bag a little tighter, like it contained not pastries but a piece of my heart. Walking up the driveway, I could almost hear his laugh in my head, deep and warm, the kind that used to echo through the walls late at night. I wanted to hear that laugh again, wanted tonight to feel like old times. With every step, I thought about how hard he'd been working lately, how tired he seemed when he came home. This surprise wasn't just for him. It was for us, to remind both of us what we had. I slipped my key into the lock as quietly as I could, a little grin spreading across my face. I imagined him sitting in the living room, maybe watching TV, completely unsuspecting of what I was about to do. I pushed the door open gently, careful not to make a sound. I wanted to catch him off guard with kindness, to step into the room and see his eyes light up, to feel that moment when he realized just how much I cared. I had no idea the silence waiting on the other side of that door carried something else entirely. The hallway smelled faintly of the lavender candle I'd lit the night before, and the familiar creak of the floor under my shoes felt oddly comforting. I held the bag close to my chest, my heart thumping with the thrill of surprising him. In my head, I pictured myself walking into the living room, dropping the bag on the table with a playful smile, and saying something like, "Look what I brought you, just because." I wanted to see his shoulders relax, to see the stress of the day melt away in that instant. There's something about giving without being asked, about showing up in the smallest but most meaningful ways, that always made me proud of the woman I was in this marriage. I believed, truly believed, that love could be nourished by gestures like this. That night, I was sure I was doing the right thing. I was sure I was stepping into a moment that would remind us both why we chose each other. But as I tightened my grip on the doorknob leading to the living room, I couldn't shake a tiny, inexplicable flutter in my chest. Excitement, yes, but something else, too. A strange weight pressing against the edges of my anticipation. Little did I know, that single step forward was about to split my world wide open, and what I found waiting inside would turn this sweet surprise into something I'd never forget. The door eased open, and I stepped into the living room, my smile still lingering, until it froze. There he was, Eric, on our sofa, his hands tangled in the hair of a woman I knew all too well. Vanessa, his ex. They weren't just sitting close, they were lost in each other, lips pressed together like I didn't even exist. For a second, my brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. The bag slipped from my fingers, pastries spilling across the hardwood floor like little casualties of my foolish joy. My chest clenched so tight it felt like I couldn't breathe. Every beat of my heart pounded in my ears, drowning out the silence that followed the thud of the bag hitting the ground. My body trembled, though I wasn't sure if it was from rage or disbelief. And then the words tore out of me, sharp and shaking. "Eric? Vanessa? What the hell is going on in my house?" My voice cracked, but it filled the room like a thunderclap. Eric jumped up, eyes wide, panic painted all over his face. "Loretta, it's not what it looks like," he stammered, holding his hands out as if he could erase what I'd already seen. Vanessa, though, oh, she didn't flinch. She leaned back on the sofa, lips curved into a smug little smirk that made my stomach twist. "Really, Eric?" she said, her voice dripping with venom. "You're still lying to her?" My blood boiled, and before I even knew what I was doing, I pointed a shaking finger at the door. "Get out, both of you, now." The sound of my own voice startled me. It wasn't the calm, patient Loretta he knew. It was fury, betrayal, humiliation, all bleeding together in one sharp command. My hands clenched so hard I thought my nails might pierce my palms. Eric's face crumbled, his body lurching forward like he was about to beg on his knees. "Loretta, wait, please, listen to me." His voice cracked, and for a fleeting moment, I saw fear in his eyes. Fear of losing me. Fear of what he had just destroyed. But before he could spit out another excuse, Vanessa stood up, brushing imaginary dust from her skirt like she had all the time in the world. That smirk never left her face. I couldn't believe it. In my own home, the place I'd built with my love, my care, my sacrifices, she had the audacity to stand there like she'd won something. My jaw clenched so tight it ached, and I could barely see straight through the fog of rage. My heart screamed one truth louder than any excuse they could throw at me. I had just been blindsided, humiliated, and betrayed by the man I trusted most. My whole body was shaking, but my voice came out sharp, colder than I ever imagined I could sound. I said, "Get out." My words sliced through the air, and even Eric flinched like I'd struck him. For a second, no one moved. The silence stretched so thick I could almost choke on it. Then Vanessa gave a slow shrug, her eyes locking on mine with a kind of mocking pity, as if I were the fool in all this. She sauntered past me, her perfume trailing in the air, sweet but sickening, turning my stomach with every breath. Eric tried to follow, but I blocked his way, glaring at him with every ounce of strength I had left. He looked like a man caught between worlds, his past clinging to him in Vanessa's smirk, his present collapsing in my fury. My hands trembled at my sides, and still I held my ground. As the door slammed behind her, the house felt heavier, like the walls themselves had absorbed my rage. Eric opened his mouth again, desperate, words stumbling out as he reached toward me. I couldn't even look at him without wanting to scream. The betrayal was etched across his face, and all I could think was how fast love can rot when it's poisoned by lies. I knew this wasn't over. The storm was only just beginning. The second the door clicked shut behind Vanessa, Eric rushed toward me like a man drowning, reaching for anything to hold on to. "Loretta, please, just listen," he begged, his hands trembling as if he could still smooth over the disaster I had just witnessed. His words fell heavy in the room, but my chest was already a furnace, every breath fueled by betrayal. "She just came by to talk," he stammered, his eyes darting anywhere but mine. I cut him off, my voice rising, raw and unsteady. "On our sofa? With your hands all over her? That's talking?" The words shot out of me like arrows, and for the first time, I saw his confidence crumble into dust. He looked smaller, desperate, like a man stripped of excuses. He reached for me again, shaking his head, the panic rolling off him in waves. "It didn't mean anything, I swear." You're the one I love." Hearing those words made my stomach twist with disgust. How dare he use love now, as if the word could wash the stain off what he'd just done. I wrapped my arms around myself, holding my body together as my trust shattered, piece by jagged piece. I could feel my pulse pounding in my temples, but I forced my voice into something steady, cutting. "No. If you loved me, this would never happen. You humiliated me in my own home." The words tasted bitter on my tongue, but they were the truth. Undeniable, unshakable. His face fell as though I'd ripped the ground out from beneath him. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out, only a strangled sound of regret. For years, I'd been the woman who held us together, the one who kept the house warm, who remembered the small things, who believed in us when life got heavy. And in one reckless moment, he burned all of it. I saw flashes of birthdays, anniversaries, quiet dinners after long days. Every memory now stained with this image of him on the sofa with her. My heart clenched, but my spine stayed straight. He tried again, softer now, like his voice alone could soothe the storm he created. "Loretta, don't throw us away. I'll fix it. I'll do anything." His desperation filled the space between us, but I felt nothing but cold resolve. I wasn't throwing us away. He had already done that. And now, standing there with the wreckage of my marriage swirling around me, I knew I had a choice to make. I looked at him, this man I'd once trusted with every fragile piece of me, and all I saw was someone I didn't recognize. My voice dropped, colder than any scream could ever be. "You want to fix it? You can't fix what you broke. You made a choice, Eric, and now I'm making mine." The words hung in the air, final, undeniable. His lips trembled like he wanted to argue, but even he knew there was nothing left to say. A strange calm settled over me, like a tide pulling back before a storm. The rage was still there, deep in my chest, but something sharper was taking its place. I wasn't going to waste my energy shouting, because shouting wouldn't change what I'd seen. No apology, no desperate plea could erase the image burned into my mind. Him, with her, in the home I built. That truth had become a scar the second I walked into that room. Eric's eyes searched mine, looking for softness, for some trace of the woman who used to forgive, who used to believe in him. But she was gone. What stood in front of him now was someone harder, someone who had been forced to see the truth and would never look away again. And as I turned from him, I already knew the next chapter wasn't about his excuses. It was about my plan. That night, I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I let Eric's voice trail off in the background while I shut myself in the bedroom, my phone gripped like a weapon. My hands still trembled, but this time it wasn't from heartbreak. It was from the icy clarity settling over me. If he thought he could betray me and walk away untouched, he didn't know me at all. My silence was louder than his begging ever could be. I sat on the edge of the bed, unlocking his phone the way I'd seen him do 1,000 times. My breath slowed as I scrolled through his messages, each text slicing through me like paper cuts I refused to ignore. Her name lit up the screen over and over, words dripping with promises, with lies he once whispered to me. I snapped photos, each click of my camera roll fueling the fire burning steady in my chest. "All those nights you claimed you were working late," I whispered to myself, my voice cracking under the weight of truth. "You were with her." The bitterness on my tongue was sharp, but so was the satisfaction of having evidence. For the first time since the moment I walked through that door, I felt in control. I wasn't just his betrayed wife anymore. I was his reckoning, and I was about to make sure he understood exactly what that meant. Morning light slipped through the blinds, but I hadn't slept a minute. My mind had been too busy stitching together every piece of proof, every photo, every message. By the time Eric stumbled into the kitchen, bleary-eyed and pathetic, I was already dialing my lawyer's number. He opened his mouth to speak, but I lifted my hand and turned away. For once, his words didn't matter. Mine did. When the line connected, my voice was calm, steady, almost businesslike. "I have evidence of his affair," I said, staring out the window as if the trees outside could anchor me. My lawyer's voice on the other end was sharp, decisive. "We have a prenup, don't we?" I pressed, my fingers tightening around the phone. "Yes," she replied without hesitation. "And infidelity means you'll keep the house and majority of the assets." That single sentence felt like a door opening, a lifeline pulling me out of the wreckage. I closed my eyes, letting the words wash over me like steel in my veins. When I whispered back, it wasn't with tears or trembling. It was with something colder. Perfect. He wanted his ex back? Let him start fresh, with nothing. And in that moment, I finally understood. My revenge didn't need to be loud. It just needed to be final. I hung up the phone, and for the first time since everything came crashing down, I felt a strange kind of peace. Not joy, not relief, just a steady certainty that I was steering the ship now. Eric paced the kitchen like a trapped animal, muttering half-formed excuses, rubbing his hands over his face as if he could scrub the guilt away. I didn't answer him. I didn't even look at him. My silence was the sharpest blade I had, and it cut deeper than shouting ever could. Later that night, while he slept on the couch we both knew was poisoned by what I'd seen, I moved quietly through the house. I gathered papers, bank statements, every little detail my lawyer would need. Each folder I stacked on the table felt like reclaiming another piece of myself. I wasn't building a case. I was building my freedom, brick by brick. Standing in the doorway of our bedroom, I stared at the life we once shared. The framed photos, the neatly folded blanket, the faint smell of his cologne clinging to the air. None of it meant anything anymore. What mattered was the future, the one where he'd come home to find his world ripped out from under him, just like he had ripped mine. And knowing that gave me all the strength I needed to see this through. A week later, the air felt different, lighter, sharper, like the calm after a storm. Eric pulled into the driveway, unsuspecting, probably ready to walk in and pretend life was normal. But normal was gone. His belongings were stacked neatly in boxes outside, the remnants of his life reduced to cardboard and tape. I stood in the doorway, arms crossed, steady as a guard at the gates. The moment his eyes landed on the boxes, his face twisted, confusion first, then disbelief, and finally, anger. "Loretta, what are you doing? You can't just throw me out." His voice cracked with a fury that almost made me laugh. Imagine that. Him, outraged at being betrayed, when I was the one left bleeding. I didn't flinch. Instead, I stepped forward, handing him a stack of papers with a calm so icy it could have frozen the sun. "Actually, I can, and I did. The prenup protects me. You lose everything." The words rolled off my tongue smooth as silk, but they cut like a razor. Watching his jaw clench, his pride crumble, was the beginning of the justice I'd promised myself. Eric's pleading turned frantic, his voice cracking in ways that used to make me soften, back when I still believed apologies could stitch up the worst of things. "Loretta, please, listen to me. I made a mistake. I love you. We can fix this. I'll go to therapy. I'll do whatever you want." He reached for me with those same desperate, fumbling hands that once felt like home. Seeing him like that, broken, unsteady, should have made something inside me melt. Instead, I felt the last of my pity harden into resolve. I slid the papers across the table and watched him read each line as if the ink itself would sting him awake. The prenup, the signed clauses, the careful notes from my lawyer, everything laid out in cold legal clarity. He read, his face a map of disbelief that shifted into a kind of ragged pleading. "Loretta, please. We can work through this," Please don't make me homeless." The audacity of him asking mercy after choosing her left me stunned for a heartbeat, then furious all over again. My answer was quieter than anything I'd shouted in the weeks before, but it landed heavier than any scream. "No, I fixed it. By ending us." I watched the color drain from his face, the man I knew shrinking into someone I barely recognized. He backed toward the boxes like a man approaching an abyss, but this time I didn't reach out. I stood there, steady, and when he finally turned to leave, his steps were small and ashamed. There was a hollow echo to his exit, one I'd built, and I already felt the final act waiting for me on the other side of the door. He hovered at the threshold, his eyes darting between me and the life he'd managed to pack into a few battered boxes. "Loretta," he whispered, his voice thin. "Vanessa. She doesn't mean anything. You do. Please." The irony of his desperation almost made me laugh. He had gambled our marriage for her, and now he wanted me to forget? I stepped closer, my hand on the door, and gave him the only truth he deserved. "You and Vanessa belong together. Empty, hollow, feeding on scraps. That's the life you chose." His mouth opened like he had more excuses ready, but I didn't care to hear them. With one calm motion, I shut the door in his face. The click of the lock was louder than any goodbye. For a moment, the silence pressed against me, but instead of pain, it felt like release. A weight sliding off my shoulders after being carried too long. My house was mine again, my space free of his lies. I walked back into the living room, the place where everything had shattered just days ago. On the floor near the sofa sat one of the pastries I'd dropped that night. I picked it up, brushed it off, and took a slow, deliberate bite. Sweetness spread across my tongue, and I smiled, not because of the pastry, but because I knew I'd taken back everything he thought he could steal from me.